Ethan Marlow stood at the edge of his grandfather's farmhouse, the morning fog coiling around the fields like old ghosts reluctant to leave. The place had been in his family for nearly a century, weathered and proud, its wood beams soaked with generations of sweat and laughter. But to Ethan, it was just a burden, a patch of land too far from the city, too full of memories that didn't pay bills. When his grandfather died, leaving him the deed, the townsfolk called it a blessing. Ethan called it an exit ticket. Within a week, the realtor's sign was hammered into the soil. He didn't bother clearing out the barn or sorting through his grandfather's belongings. The buyer could deal with the dust. As he signed the papers, he felt a strange tug. Not guilt, exactly, more like something watching. He brushed it off. He had debts to pay, a girlfriend who wanted vacations, and a life waiting far from these cracked wooden floors. He told himself it was just property, wood and land, not a soul. The buyer, a quiet man named Victor Hale, arrived 3 days later. He didn't haggle, didn't smile, just inspected every corner of the house like he was reading its secrets. When Ethan handed over the keys, Victor asked softly, "Did you ever check the cellar?" Ethan smirked. "Didn't know there was one." Victor's eyes flicked up briefly, something unreadable in them. "Oh, there's always a cellar," he murmured, and left with the keys dangling in his hand like a pendulum. Ethan didn't think much of it. He wired his girlfriend a down payment for their new apartment and drove away from the farmhouse without looking back. But that night, his dreams were thick with the sound of a shovel hitting earth. Steady, deliberate, and the faint scent of cigar smoke, the kind his grandfather used to favor. Days turned to weeks. Ethan settled into city life, a cramped apartment, constant noise, endless bills. He told himself he was free, but freedom had teeth. The money from the sale disappeared fast, swallowed by credit cards and bad decisions. His girlfriend, Lacey, found better company, a richer man, with less baggage and fewer ghosts. Ethan started drinking, scrolling through pictures of the farmhouse on his phone late at night. Then one morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photograph. The farmhouse, newly restored, vibrant under golden light. And beneath it, a note in tight handwriting. "You should have stayed long enough to dig." Ethan laughed it off at first, but the more he stared, the colder his hands felt. There was something buried in that land, something his grandfather had wanted him to find. Haunted by the message, Ethan drove back to the town he'd abandoned. The locals were polite but distant. At the diner, the waitress, an old family friend, looked at him like she was seeing a ghost herself. "You heard what happened?" she asked. He shook his head. "Your grandfather's land. The new owner found something. Some kind of chest buried beneath the barn. He called the county in. They shut the place down for investigation." Ethan's stomach dropped. That night he drove past the property. Police tape fluttered in the wind, yellow against the dark. The farmhouse windows glowed faintly, though no one was supposed to be inside. He parked a few yards away, heart pounding. Then, through the cracked front door, he saw a flicker of movement. A silhouette in the same old flannel his grandfather used to wear, standing in the cellar doorway. Ethan returned the next morning, pretending to be curious about the development. The officers didn't stop him when he said he was family. The chest they'd uncovered was old, iron-bound, and half-decayed. Inside were dozens of letters, ledgers, and a rusted revolver. The papers documented the Marlow family's early years, but they weren't farming records. They were confessions. His great-grandfather, it seemed, had run a debt racket during the Depression, forcing desperate neighbors off their land. The farmhouse was built on suffering. His grandfather must have found out and tried to make it right, but never finished the work. That night, Ethan stayed at a motel, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that flannel figure again, and heard the words from the note echoing in his head. "You should have stayed long enough to dig. Sleep finally gave way to restlessness, and restlessness to guilt. Ethan drove back to the property after midnight, parking where the police tape had torn loose. The wind moved through the fields in soft, uneven breaths, whispering through the cornstalks. He found the cellar door open, wide as though it had been waiting. The air inside was cool and damp, laced with the scent of soil and iron. His flashlight trembled across the stone walls, tracing marks that looked like initials, carved by hand. In the corner, something caught the light. A small wooden box, different from the chest. Inside it were folded papers, brittle and yellowed, addressed to "My grandson." His breath hitched. He unfolded one carefully. It was a letter, written in his grandfather's shaky pen. "If you're reading this, you've already sold what should never have been sold. But you can still put it right. The land remembers what was taken, and who took it." Ethan felt the air shift behind him like someone had stepped closer. He didn't turn. He just whispered, "I'm sorry." He spent the next day scouring through the old papers, piecing together his family's hidden sins. The ledgers detailed names of families who'd lost everything. Neighbors, friends, people whose land became part of the Marlow property. At the end of the stack, one final note from his grandfather read, "The earth won't rest until it's given back what it's owed." Ethan realized the buyer, Victor Hale, had probably known something, maybe even come searching for it. That thought pushed him back to the farmhouse, where he found a crew of restoration workers already busy painting over the past. He asked for Victor, but they said the man had disappeared a week ago, left everything behind. In his old office lay another envelope, this one sealed with red wax. Inside was a deed, the property signed back to Ethan. Below Victor's name a single line was scrawled, "You'll finish what your bloodline started." Ethan didn't understand at first, but when he tried to leave town again, every attempt failed. The car breaking down, his phone dying, strange misfortunes stacking like dominoes. He ended up sleeping in the old farmhouse, surrounded by the scent of dust and oil. That night, the dreams returned. Only this time, he wasn't watching. He was there, beside his great-grandfather digging shallow graves, hearing the sobs of men whose land was stolen. When he woke, his hands were filthy with dirt. The cellar door was open again, and beside it, fresh soil had been turned. Something was being unearthed, or trying to come through. He knew then. The house wasn't haunted by his grandfather. It was haunted by the truth they'd buried. Determined to break the cycle, Ethan gathered the old ledgers and every document tied to the stolen land. With the help of the town clerk, he tracked down the descendants of the families wronged by the Marlows. Many were skeptical, some bitter, but one by one he gave them back what was left. Small parcels of land, deeds, and money from selling his city apartment. Each restitution lifted something heavy from his chest. The farmhouse grew quieter. The dreams faded. By the time he finished, only one name remained: Victor Hale. Ethan searched, but no record of him existed. No birth certificate, no property license, nothing. Just a single photograph on the mantel. Victor standing with his grandfather decades ago, smiling like old friends. Beneath it, faint handwriting: "The man I wronged most." On the final night, Ethan sat on the farmhouse porch as the fog rolled back across the fields. The air smelled like rain and forgiveness. He lit one of his grandfather's cigars, the last one, and whispered into the quiet, "It's done." A faint shape stood by the old oak tree, nodding once before dissolving into mist. The next morning, the land felt different, alive, balanced. Ethan sold the property again, but this time to the town, turning it into a memorial park for the families his ancestors had harmed. He didn't keep the profit. He didn't need to. When he left, he didn't feel watched anymore. The ledger was closed, and for the first time, so was the debt of his bloodline.